I loved Resident Evil 7, so playing The Village was a done deal. However, I usually wait for the prices to drop a bit before I play new games. There's so many games I haven't finished that there's never a need for me to hurry. In addition to that, since I play the games in Ultrawide, waiting has the added advantage of better fixes. I know that some of you might be thinking, what fixes? Resident Evil 8 supports Ultrawide natively. To that I say, not quite. The field of view is still not wide enough, and especially when playing in 32:9, the game does feel a bit zoomed in. In addition to that, there's this annoying vignette effect which essentially darkens the edges of the screen and creates something similar to tunnel vision at all times. You can see it in this quick comparison. Once I show you the one with the vignette effect and once with the fix that removes it. It's not too bad, but just feels nicer to look at everything after you have applied the fix. The difference is especially obvious if you play with HDR on, since the brightness is particularly important here. The reason why I ended up playing the game earlier than I expected is because of something I read the other day. Apparently the game had been cracked and is now running a lot better with that crack. This was the reason why I decided to get the game earlier on than I had planned and test it immediately, because I really wanted to confirm this. It's nothing new that pirates usually get the better experience than the paying customer, and I have spoken of this in the past, but this time the differences are quite extreme, and again the culprit is DRM. Apparently Capcom decided to patch this issue almost 4 months later, and it was proven that the cracked version plays a lot better. This was actually the reason why Capcom reacted. So I guess, thank you pirates. Just imagine the arrogance of the developer here. A problem is simply ignored in the name of having an extra layer of DRM. Doesn't matter that your customers get a shitty experience. Absolute madness. With that out of the way, let's look at the rest of the game. This time around, we get to spend a lot more time outside than usual. As I entered the village, I got a strong Resident Evil 4 vibe. It all starts a bit slowly, but not long after you have to survive a monster attack by running from house to house, blocking doors and fighting as hard as you can. The Lycans are the first enemies you will encounter, and I was immediately wondering why there are only male Lycans. Why aren't there any female ones? Where's the logic behind this? The game certainly does not explain it. As for the village itself, it looks nice at first, but then you quickly notice how dead it feels. And I mean that in a bad way. Everything is static, nothing ever moves. There is no wind, there are no waving flags, or some clothes left out to dry outside. It feels like it's frozen in place. In addition to that, too many assets are being reused. Every dead body you encounter is the same, every crucified person is the same from before. Luckily, the next zones you traverse become more interesting, but unfortunately, no matter how open an area feels, it's still quite linear. The game guides you by the hand and never lets you explore freely. If you wander off too far, you realize that the path ahead is blocked and requires some item or key in order to progress. Should you realize that you don't have that item, it's a clear indication that you will be returning here a bit later. There are occasional puzzles, but those could hardly be any simpler. I'm not even sure if the word puzzle applies here in most of the cases. In addition to that, the level design makes it a bit too obvious that the boss fights are all staged. The game tells you multiple times that the Dimitrescu daughters are weak to the cold weather from outside, yet you somehow end up fighting them in places where it's really easy to let that cold, fresh air inside. In one of the cases, the daughter is waiting for you in a library with a prominent lever in the middle of the room, which when pulled opens a large part of the ceiling, letting in a ton of cold air. Why would she wait for you in such a place? I mean, I know it's gameplay logic, but there are better ways to mask such things so that it's not that obvious. My immediate thought was, how nice of the invulnerable hot chick to wait for me in the one room where she becomes the most vulnerable. Something else that quickly became obvious was the inventory management. Why do we even have it? You will usually not find yourself in need of more space. The addition of crafting makes this even less of a topic, since the materials don't take up inventory space. This means that you can save your space by only crafting exactly when you need a specific item. I understand that this design choice was made so that the game can be more accessible, and I'm not opposed to it. Just remove the need to manage it. On top of that, you can always buy more ammo or healing items from the shop anyway. Resources are generally abundant and fighting is usually your best option. I would sometimes find myself a bit low on ammo, but I don't remember a single time when I was completely out of it. And for the most part, I would deal with monsters by simply killing them. The guns in Resident Evil 8 are okay, although I must say that they're not very satisfying to use, especially during the first playthrough. Once you unlock some crazy weapons later, it can be more fun, but for the most part, I felt rather bored with the selection. I mean, what the hell do you really need a sniper for in a Resident Evil game? In addition to that, there are almost never reasons for you to do anything but go for the head. You know how in the Resident Evil 2 remake it was sometimes smart to shoot the zombie in the knee, or how in Resident Evil 4 you could shoot someone's torch, and if you did it just right, they would be set on fire. The same with shooting an enemy near a ledge to make them fall off. All of these things are possible here as well, but extremely underused, and you'd be lucky if you ever actually managed to do it during a playthrough. It feels like the game wanted to combine the good things from all previous Resident Evil games, and I applaud them for trying, but sadly it ended up being a jack of all trades and a master of none. In the castle, you'll end up being chased by Lady Dimitrescu at random. She's supposed to be a bit like Mr. X, with the main difference that she's not threatening at all. Not only is she easy to dodge, but she's also kind of nice to look at as well. And don't get me started on her hot daughters. I enjoy looking at attractive women as much as the next guy, so don't expect me to be tense or even scared when they start chasing me. By the way, I found it particularly annoying that nobody in the game seems to know how to pronounce the name Dimitrescu. I have a Romanian friend, so I actually asked him and he confirmed that indeed every single character, including Lady Dimitrescu herself, are actually not pronouncing the name correctly. I mean, her pronunciation is the worst of all. She literally says Domitrescu instead of Dimitrescu. The next zone I want to talk about is the dollhouse. That's when the game tries to be scary and succeeds to some extent. Just look at this scene. Yeah, I actually got a bit unnerved there, I won't lie to you. But before it starts, it's already over. The giant fish guy is interesting and reminded me of Resident Evil 4 again, but it's kind of funny how he can only get you when you are on a specific platform, not on any other. Once you realize that, the fight becomes trivial and any sense of danger is lost. The factory is kind of a cool zone, but also the most combat heavy one, ending with a boss fight where you're basically in something like a tank. This is also my least favorite boss fight, although the Lady Dimitrescu one is very close. As for the story, it's worse than I imagined it to be. I mean, Resident Evil has always had some really bad storytelling. In 7, your long lost wife contacts you and you drive off to go save her. You are a US citizen but don't even take a gun. The same kind of people who can get a gun whenever they need one, and on top of that you don't even inform the police. It's pretty absurd. Here the game goes way beyond that. I would love to discuss in detail where it all fails, but the problem is that I would be spoiling. Although, to be honest, with that story I probably would be doing you a favor, but still, I don't do that. Let's just say that the story starts in a way which triggers a whole chain of events. And this start is literally the stupidest way you could have kicked off this story. There are a ton of solutions which are better. Play through the game and you'll immediately know what I mean. The narrative is woven so lazily that I could think of something better in an hour. Capcom, pay me some money and I will think of a much better story for the next Resident Evil game. Alternatively, if you let me voice act and motion capture one of the villains, I'll do the whole thing for free. And there's something else. In Resident Evil 7, the Baker family felt a bit distant, like they were each waiting for their turn to be dealt with by Ethan. I was hoping that in the next game we would get a more unified group of people where they would even help each other and maybe even have a boss fight where more than one attack you at the same time and you have to prioritize one over the other for some reason, whatever that is, while that other one who you don't want to attack constantly bothers and blocks you. Stuff like that. Instead, we have a group comprised of several antagonists which cannot stand each other's guts, and we again have this split design where each of them gets their own level. There's no real interaction between them. That left me a bit disappointed. I was hoping for more. In addition to that, Resident Evil 8 continues to attempt to connect itself to the rest of the games of the series, story-wise I mean. That was never something that mattered to me, and due to how crazy all the different stories and characters can be, it never really works well either. Why does it have to be that every Resident Evil game has to be in the same universe as all the others and directly interconnected? I mean, the characters don't look the same. Look at Chris, he looks different again. On the other end, the voice acting is excellent and the motion capture really adds to the experience. The game also features a mercenary mode. The main issue here is that some levels are like mazes, and since the enemies don't just spawn around you, I found myself having to look for them and losing my combo points. That was a bit frustrating. Other than that, it was a fun addition and helped me unlock more stuff for the main game. Resident Evil 8 as a whole is fun to play. To be honest, it feels like a step down from its predecessor, but it is still enjoyable. 7 was perhaps a bit more balanced and more aware of what it wanted to be. Whereas the Village on the other end feels like it's having an identity crisis. It's not a bad game, in fact it's quite good. I just feel like it could have been so much better. Hell, if they had bothered to write a proper story, I would have been a lot more forgiving when it comes to the game's other problems. But the story is pretty much the biggest issue here, which just serves to amplify all of its other shortcomings. If you've enjoyed Resident Evil 7 in the past, then you will still have a good time with Resident Evil 8, no doubt about it. But it will be a mixed bag in many aspects as well. With the previous game, you knew what you were getting, and for the most part, the game remained true to that. This one is like a bi-curious teenager, not sure of what it is, and wanting to try everything out before making a definitive decision. But at the end of the day, this is Resident Evil 8 The Village, and we both know you either have or will play it, and when you do, let me know what you thought of it. And if you are interested in the fix that I used to make the whole image a bit brighter and remove the complete vignette effect, let me know and I'll be happy to share it with you. Thank you for watching Game Filter. I hope to see you on the next one. Until then, have a great day.